so I'm going to grade discussion posts, continue grading those probably this afternoon and evening. The main time I have to grade on the weekends, though, when I have any energy to grade is on the weekends. And so I've got mostly this weekend free, so that'll be good. So I'll start grading essays too. I'm going to grade the 1301 essays first. Last semester that was you guys. This semester it's not. So I'm going to be grading the 1301 classes essays first because they're new to college. It's very scary. What do I do? I'm going to grade their stuff, and then you guys kind of already know me. You're comfortable. The essay is pretty easy, assuming you do it. So it's a really easy essay. I mean, it's just like, what'd you do on the discussion post? Now, plus why you think what you think. That's it. It's no big deal. But for 600 words. Anybody who's emailed me and said I forgot the discussion post, can you open it back up? I can't. That will happen at the end of the semester. Anybody who missed a quiz, you can still email me and I can open the quiz back up for you if the reason's good enough. Not, I just forgot to do those. So yeah, so if you miss a quiz, email me. If you miss a discussion post, you'll have to wait like, I don't know, 12, 13 weeks for that to open back up. And it'll only be for partial credit. So make sure you catch all those from here on out. Essay due what? Tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be hilarious. I'm going to take a picture, like a screenshot of how many things I have to grade. It's going to be so funny. Right now I'm at 220. And that's just in 1302. It seems like every time I finally get caught up on a discussion post, like there are more that come. So, but the intro posts, I am saying something kind of specific on your discussion intro posts. So if you click the feedback, you'll see that I did say, I didn't know this about you. It's great to have you in class again.
Yeah.
Right? Is that roughly what everybody said? If you didn't give me much, I didn't give you much. If you said something weird, I addressed it. Usually it's pretty topical to what you're writing about. I can't help myself. Like, I know it's taking me more time to do it that way, but it's like, can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Let's see. Sorry, I had an itch on my foot. I had to scratch it. Questions? Questions about non-lit, like, well, yeah, go ahead.
On my discussion post, like, in my About Me thing, the comment you put is like, clarinet is not the French word for happiness, but like,
yeah,
it was just really random.
I just thought you should know that.
That it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Is it?
In case anybody was wondering, like, is clarinet the French word for happiness? It is not. Nor is it pronounced clarinet.
He just had a random fact.
Alright, well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. I spread knowledge in all kinds of ways. Other question? No? Okay, so this will seem strange, but I thought that you would be pissed if you didn't get to see this. I don't know, maybe you don't care. Oh, you don't even know yet. So yesterday I was gone at, did I already mention this, that I was gone at jury duty?
Yeah.
So as a result, the students who were here, I had basically taken a video from a prior semester and tacked on an intro to it and told them, like, oh, hey guys, what you're going to see, here's the differences in what we're doing this semester versus what we did then. And I had it on this computer, and they would just start it up after taking roll, and they would watch it. You did not get to see the intro that I made.
Is it gonna be funny like the last one?
I can't guarantee that. I'm just gonna. I feel like it's important. This is not going to appear as the intro on all of our videos because I don't think I can allow myself to do that, but I enjoy it. I can't, I don't know.
Oh no.
So this, somebody want to get the two lights back there, the two left light switches? The left light switches. That's good. With my wife, I have to say the other left because she'll. I don't know why. Anytime I say left or right to my wife, she does the opposite.
Yeah.
Y'all know anybody who does that same thing? It's weird. It's like she's thinking from my perspective first, which I find interesting. Kyla, though, is very much thinking from her own perspective, which was smart. Not that it's not smart, not to do it the other way, but no, you did it absolutely correctly. It's very strange that I'm calling you out on something you did absolutely correctly. God, Kyla.
Sorry.
So normal. So this is the intro that they all saw when I wasn't here. And frankly, I just kind of want to see a reaction to it. I don't know if we can hear it yet.
Here we go, now there's stuff. Gonna have lots of fun, English things. Gonna go on an English journey. With each other. Yeah. English journey.
So that was what they saw. I
You should add
had no reason to show you that other than just really wanting to show you that.
it. You should add it to all.
Honestly, if that's
No, I'm not adding it to all the. Like it would be a good it would be a good video for like if I was gonna
That should be your
do
YouTube
just a
intro.
dedicated online video.
That should be your YouTube intro.
YouTube intro.
Yeah. Just mark up the English
each time we
words.
come into class, just play that. Just to start the class.
It looks like an
You could get famous.
From. I've seen it.
You
I've
could
seen that
get
meme
famous.
Before.
I literally just went on YouTube and typed cheesy 80s opening. That's it. So yeah, you can turn the lights back on. That's it. That's all it is.
Just because of his hair and his beard.
So I thought, now this is the part that's going to be really like, you'll probably just be annoyed by this, but that whole, it's like some people pointed out in the video, they're like, well, I don't know, you're a little off key. Like you're singing, it's a little off key. Have I told you all about my musical skills? I think I have. I think you'll remember when I tell you, but in high school, as a trumpet, I was for Cheryl State.
Oh my.
When I sing at church, I actually lead. When I'm at church, usually if I have some free time, I tell them, hey, you can put me down for singing on certain times because I can't do it all year because I have grading. But I lead singing at church, and the most common problem I have with people is, well, actually, there's one guy who, this is going to be on the video, I probably should take this, and it just bothers me so much. Like I go, oh, that's not right. So I find it, so a lot of people will point out that, oh, that was very off key, that video, right? But you have to understand the tone you're going for, cheesy 80s opening. It's very important it be off key. If it's not off key, it's not funny. So I had to sing off key, and somebody was like, that's really off key though. And it's like, do you not get it? Like, that's the point. And it's like, but the green screen works a little bad. I know. It's supposed to be. Like if it was good, I would use some like HD background or something, but I didn't. I used a rainbow educational video
144.
opening.
It looks like the intro to the driver's ed video.
Like, yeah, it does kind of look like that. Interestingly, it's a geography of the USA video. That's why it ends with this extremely long shot of Washington Monument. Because after that, it does like the Lincoln Memorial, and you can tell literally they just aren't Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial very close together. It was like somebody just took the camera and walked over here and went. Now we're over here. But yeah, I didn't want to include all the other geographies. So. And the lyrics I wrote very quickly. I wrote them to be bad. In fact, I think, don't I use the word things twice? I use the word things and stuff. It's not meant to be poetic. I was very worried that if I tried to sing it too many times, it would actually sound worse. Not worse in a good way. I mean like worse by sounding better. Does that make sense? Like I would get too used to the song and then it would just sound better. I told you you're going to hate this part. It's me explaining what makes it funny. Right? Isn't it like the worst? Like when somebody like tells you a joke and they're like, oh, you didn't get it. Let me explain. And you're like, oh my gosh. It's awful. but also this is technically called advanced composition. So if I explain how I achieved the tone, I think it's important. Yeah. My favorite part is where I go, and I'm like, that actually took 2 cuts. I had to like take 2 animation cuts and have them meet at the middle. You don't care. You haven't cared, and that's fine. So yes.
Can you upload that to Blackboard?
Now, sometimes I feel like certain moments in life are special. Did you know that Dave Chappelle, about 5 years ago, or maybe 4 years ago, they came up with this thing where like you can take somebody's cell phone and put it in a case that locks magnetically, and you can't get it out. So like Chappelle, he started using these for his comedy shows. So what he does is you arrive to the show, you've got your phone, you're like, I can't wait to record this and upload it like in 5-second segments to Snapchat over like 45 videos. People are gonna love this, right? They don't. They never like it. They don't like your concerts you do that way. They don't like it when you go to the like Southern Junction or something. They don't. Nobody likes this. Don't do it. They find it very irritating. They just don't want to tell you because you're their friend. But this is what happens. Is like if they're, I don't know, like on Instagram or something, you've got a whole bunch of videos you post one after the other, or like doesn't they have stories now on Instagram because they were afraid that Snapchat was like intruding on their territory? They just go like this, tap 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 to get past it. That's what they do. So just a warning. What was I saying? Oh, so basically what he does now is everybody who arrives to his concerts, they like put their cell phones in this little pouch. It magnetically seals, and they can't get it back out the whole time they're at his comedy show. They just have to sit and like enjoy it.
How do you get that?
When you leave, there's a person who you basically go by the thing, and then you get your phone back out of the pouch. And I think if somebody sees you with like a phone, like if you bring a second phone to the comedy show, like you get like kicked out. Because he wants everybody to just have that one experience that one time. He doesn't want everybody to be so wrapped up in trying to record it that they don't actually experience it. How ironic! I'm sitting here worried about what I'm recording, talking about not worrying about recording. How ironic! Which is kind of nice these days, right? Isn't it hard to experience something just naturally without getting, I could take a picture of this, or I could video it. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so that's how I feel about my video. That was it. I hope you enjoyed it.
Hey,
That was your experience with it. Huh? Oh, it's just, the only YouTube channel I have is the one that links out from Blackboard. Yeah, but I only showed them a file. I didn't show them the YouTube video. I never uploaded it to YouTube. Yeah, so that workaround you were going for, doesn't exist. I apologize.
You could get famous.
Don't I deserve a pretty please?
I feel like you get famous.
Pretty please.
No. But I did get you to say pretty please. What is this, like the 80s? Pretty please. So we're going to talk about literature today. Was there any pressing pieces of like the literature y'all want to talk? I mean, I assume since you already did a quiz over it, you're not too concerned with continuing talking about it. On like the Yellow Wallpaper, Rose Friendly, Occurrence at Outcreek. Y'all be willing to move on to the other stuff?
The stories this week were stupid.
Stupid, you say?
Yes.
James had a problem with what you just said.
The lottery was stupid.
I can understand that now.
Lottery?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. So here's the deal. Like, yeah, I would say that if I'm not gonna say that you just read the lottery, I will say, okay, but the lottery is stupid. A lot of times you'll read people who read the lottery go, if you just read the lottery, anybody out there, you're probably like, wow, the story sucked. But if you read Battle Royal, you were like, what the hell did I just read? And it might be tempting to say that was openly racist. Until you realize you're reading the first chapter of the novel Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. who was African American writer during the Civil Rights Movement. So he is himself black, writing about how he feels
I didn't know that.
white culture treats him.
So the book, I mean,
Is
there was a
racist,
picture
but
of
it's
him
not
before the
racist.
story started.
True, but that's on a different page.
I didn't look at that.
No, the
The
book.
book itself didn't have racist.
Yeah.
Additionally, if you're just sitting at home in front of your computer,
Next page.
or you're sitting on your bed and you've got your phone, but the book is like either over there
What?
or maybe all the way at school, you may just see,
Summary.
can I Google this?
Yeah.
And if I can Google the story and look at it from my phone instead of having to get up and go get the book when it's already dark in my room anyway, I'll probably just Google it. Is that what happened similar to you?
Well,
explains things
I did
so
that
well.
after I read the book. Because I didn't
After you read
understand
it. Oh, okay, so you read it out of the book.
So I read it out of the book and then I read it like an explanation of the story.
Yeah, this was my week of, I guess last week was my week of rug gets pulled out from under you at the end. This is my week of the stories start turning into something really messed up about halfway through. And you start going, or kind of early actually in Battle Royal, but they all start getting like a developed, like really messed up place sometime during the story. Probably many of you started reading, if you read Good Man is Hard to Find first, this did not happen to you. But if you looked at Good Man is Hard to Find and went, that's the longest one, I'll save it for last. Because that, I don't know, that makes no sense to me. But if you did that, you were like, okay, shortest one, lottery, let's read it. Oh, okay. Now I know why he won't let us write about Hunger Games. Next, Battle Royal. That was really messed up. Let's read Good Man is Hard to Find. Oh, okay, just a good old-timey comedy with a racist grandma. This is nice. Then all of a sudden they have a car wreck and everything changes. Like, what the hell just happened?
That was so
weird. Like, she got startled, so they had a car wreck. Like, that was weird.
Well, I don't
No,
know.
but she wanted to go down that road.
Yeah, to find that house. She thought that house
Okay,
was
but
down the
she
road.
said
That
she-
she
yeah,
wasn't
but-
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, plot twist,
She
I
just-
really think the misfit guy is
Her son.
her son.
Yeah, same.
No.
I don't know. No,
Yes,
it's because of the shirt.
I didn't read your thing, but
No,
It's because of the shirt. He even said he's not.
I mean, yeah.
Conspiracy theory.
Did not she try to convince him the whole time that he was like such a good person?
Listen,
She didn't want to die.
Yeah, because he supposedly killed his dad. Well, the grand person, her husband's missing. He's gone. She refers to the guy.
They used all of that to trick you into thinking.
No.
Also, it says that she looks at him like the misfit. She's like,
Yeah.
like she's
And how
seen
she
him
just-
her whole life.
It didn't even say how she knows that's the misfit either. Like, she just went into it knowing. Like, she would be like, oh, I heard it on the news.
So here,
I agree with what Nichols said. Nichols is always right.
no, I'm not necessarily always right. This is what I feel.
I'm trying
There is
to
a-
back you up here.
But I've already said like I'm not always right. This is one of the reasons I don't want to tell you guys. I would like you just doing the discussion post ahead of time because I like you to kind of develop your own opinions on the stories. Then you hear like what my thoughts are because I don't want my thoughts to just be definitive. Maybe it'll help you too to know that like when we were in grad school, me and like the people I was in grad school with, in most classroom discussions, like I would offer something, I'd say, this is what I think. And then like, I don't know if they were just trying to posture in front of the other professors so that they would be like the favorites. But a lot of the other ones were like, no, that is dumb. And this is what the real idea is. And I was like, does everybody just not like me or do they really disagree with me? It was hard to figure out. Also, I was really young. Like everybody else was like in their 30s and I was like 23 in grad school. And I don't think they liked that. Like I'm like the young pipsqueak kid. Like, hi guys, I like English. I want to be a professor like you. And they're like, yeah, shut up. I've already been through life, and here you are. So, and no offense, but like if I was like to go to school for like my PhD, and then one of y'all pops into my like master's classes, and you're like, yeah, I'm doing classes too. I'd be like, all right, let's do this class. And I'd be like, every time you'd say something, I'd be like, he doesn't know. I know. You don't know. You know? But I'm talking about on an emotional level, not like an intellectual level. I'd be like, no, I'm totally giving them a fair shake. But inside, it's like going, why is he here? I'm here. You know? It's like, that's not, live your life first, buddy, then come to grad school. Do y'all not ever honest about your own feelings to yourself? You try to pretend like you're a better person than you are?
Yes, you.
You're not as good a person as you think you are.
No.
I know I'm horrible.
I know I'm horrible. The reason I don't think that he is actually her son, she says, why, you're my own boy. And people go, oh, that means that he is her own boy, like he's her son. But I think it's like, I don't know, because the whole ending's so messed up. To me, it just seems like this desperate way to try to stay alive, which she stops caring about her family real quick.
She don't even care.
She's like, they wreck, and then they start taking them 2 by 2, like it's freaking Noah's Ark of Death, to the woods and like shooting them. The first one I think gets shot is.
The kids were like so willing to go back there with them, like you know.
Well, they're like, come here, buddy, and it's like Bailey Boy, so like he goes first. Then you hear the gunshots, and then they're just distraught. I mean, I can't imagine. Like, we all watch these movies every day, right? Or if there's some sort of, I think it's one of the reasons there aren't a whole lot of like school shooting movies. Because I think an American school shooting movie would have to imagine that if there was a school shooting, like somehow one of the students is going to be like The Rock and be like, we're going to stop this shooting. And then like you're running through the school like, you know, somehow like Home Aloneing it, you know, with like this set of traps that like stop the shooter. When really it would probably work a lot more like if any of you'll ever get a chance to watch the movie Elephant. I'm not telling you to go watch it, but like you watch this movie and it's like seems like it's about a high school. It's called like Elephant, but then you're like, oh shoot, like it gets kind of. I mean, there's a lot of people who put it on their top 10 best lists of best movies either in the 90s or the 2000s. I can't remember which one. Oh no, it's sad. It's sad as hell. I don't know of anywhere you can actually watch it. You might be able to watch it on like Vudu if you rent it. Or Bethany probably knows a way to find it because she was saying the other day that whatever that movie was is already out.
It's probably on.
I was like, no, it's not. Huh?
Probably on movie box.
Yeah, but it's not. It's definitely an artsy film. It's not like a movie that you're just watching for its action. But the idea that like you don't see a lot of those school shooting movies because like I think the reason you don't see something like that is it essentially requires the entire student populace to sort of like fight back and win, and that just doesn't happen. What happens is somebody shows up at a school with a gun and starts shooting, and everybody freaks out and doesn't know what to do, even if there's a plan. Like if they've got, I'm sure y'all have drills.
No.
Do you do for that?
No.
You have fire drills, right?
No.
But even in fire drills, which happen I think more often than shootings.
Like,
Ms. Z said we were gonna have one the other day.
Yeah.
But I mean, still, a drill, everybody walks out in single file because that's the rule. But as soon as you hear gunshots, for most people, all bets are off.
fine.
I was listening to a podcast. The other day, and in the podcast, they said that there was something they never anticipated during the Parkland shooting, which was that there's a quad area where like buildings meet, and as people came out into like the quad area, it's like an open court area with multiple buildings meeting. The gunshot sounds were ricocheting off the walls, and so everybody as they came out thought that they were coming from the other side, so we're running back. So nobody knew where the gunshots were actually coming from. So they said it was very strange because people were running away from what they thought were gunshots and sometimes toward them because the way the sound was bouncing off the walls. So it's just nobody understands like all the little variables that could go into that sort of situation. So I think when you have the wife and she just willingly walks into the woods, I think that's just like your husband, you've heard a gunshot, you don't hear him saying anything, he's probably dead. You're like, what do I do? And so they sort of just end up going, Whereas grandma, she's like, oh man, if I'm going to live, I got to act quite quick and start pleading.
Exactly. She disowned him because he killed her husband. And so she's trying to get on his side.
Wait, the wife?
Yeah.
No, you're talking about the grandma
Yeah.
disowned.
Misfit, like
Disowned the misfit as her son.
yeah, because she killed
Because
because
he
the
killed
misfit killed the husband.
But what are the odds? She
That's why
randomly
the
wanted to
husband's
turn
missing.
down that road, and he's like there. That's stupid.
No, he came after. Exactly. Like, how did she even know where he was? She knew because that's her son. She like.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That, like,
Why else would she be paying attention to it?
The only reason I think she even calls him her son is because if you notice in the story, it says that when they go and shoot Bailey, yeah, they come back with his shirt.
Exactly.
Then he puts it on.
Why would you give him a random stranger the shirt?
So it's a weird, doesn't it say it has like flamingos on it or birds on it? So it's a weird, like, this is weird. Do y'all know who Mr. Norris is? The math teacher? Probably some of your senior friends have him. He always wears, like, especially like this time of year, he'll start wearing like these shirts that are like tessellated, like weird images of like flamingos and pineapples, and I don't know, it's just stuff like his shirts his wife bought him. They look like the kind of things you would wear to like a beach getaway. But this I've always thought, and I don't know if it was intentional, but Alan Moore, the guy who wrote V for Vendetta, the guy who wrote Watchmen, all those like classic comics, he wrote The Killing Joke, which is a Batman story, and in there he has the Joker wearing this outfit, which is like a hat with like a beach shirt, and he's got a gun. And I was like, man, that actually matches exactly with what the Misfit at that moment is supposedly wearing when he's talking to Grandma. So I don't know if he stole that from, but like this is a pretty decent image. Before that, he's not wearing a shirt at all.
Yeah.
He's a dude standing in a hat and like I guess belted khakis.
Yeah.
Just a weird. Like who just wanders around without a shirt? Maybe it's because it's like the 50s, 40s, 60s, like that's considered normal. But so he's having this whole discussion about what he thinks like God is and like reality is while he's not wearing a shirt, but then he just suddenly puts on the shirt her son was wearing like 2 minutes ago. I don't know if there's blood on it or not. They might have taken the shirt off before so it didn't have blood on it.
It's from the suitcases in the car.
Oh, okay. But still, he's wearing his shirt. So she's sitting there wearing her son's shirt. She's got to be at least somewhat distraught, even though she's very selfish. So I think that at that moment she says, she just kind of looks him up and down and sees like he's wearing. It's like, well, why you're my own boy? Because she already thinks he's crazy. Because he's like, if I'd just been able to see like Jesus die on the cross, I'd know. I'd be like, okay, so you're obviously insane. Because this is like why you kill people.
No.
They tell me I did all this stuff, but I don't think I really did.
No.
But it's like the whole thing is just like breaking down. It doesn't feel like reality. That's the thing is we want like these days for there to be a twist, right? Like the Misfit is her son. We want everything to link up and be circular and make sense. But the Misfit doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
He's not a guy who makes sense.
No.
But she is her son.
No, there is like.
If y'all had read my discussion post, you would have understood why.
He's like, you would know.
I read your discussion post.
And we're right.
What does Spark Note say? Does it say he is her son?
No,
I don't know.
it doesn't.
She's just making that up.
No, I read
right.
Spark Notes. Thank you very much.
She read Spark Notes instead of book.
No, I did read the book. Did you not hear me talking earlier?
I'm messing with you too.
Next story.
It was like a fight. Huh? Why'd you do the doot? That's weird. Yeah, so it's a weird sort of like it doesn't really. But if you think about it, like I think that the point of this is it doesn't really matter if he is or isn't her son.
Still dead.
I think that the focus should be on the grandma, because she to me is like the main character of the story, and gosh, do I hate her.
Yeah.
Like she's horrible. Did somebody have a hand raised and say something? I thought I saw a hand. No. I don't want. If y'all want to take over, y'all take over anytime you want to. Otherwise, I'm just sitting talking the whole time. But the part that really does it for me, where is Good Man is hard to find. The part that really does it for me. Let's see, 1007 to 1020. And this is, I think, when you're supposed to know that she's a horrible human being. Is on page 1010. Ah, yes, you're all turning there. So I'll just read. So John Wesley says, let's go through Georgia fast so we won't have to look at it much. And then Grandma says, if I were a little boy, I wouldn't talk about my native state that way. Tennessee has the mountains and Georgia has the hills. Tennessee's just a hillbilly dumping ground, and Georgia's a lousy state too. You said it. That's June Star, the sister.
You sound like this song.
And then you're going to hear me say some words that but I think it's important that you hear them said, okay? This is how I feel about literature. And then Grandma says, in my time, said the grandmother, hold on,
Yes.
folding her thin-veined fingers. Children were more respectful of their native states and their parents and everything else. People did right then. "Oh, look at that cute little pickaninny," she said, and pointed to a Negro child standing in the door of a shack. "Wouldn't that make a picture now?" she asked, and they all turned and looked at the little Negro out the back window. He waved. "He didn't have any breeches on," June Star said. "He probably didn't have any," the grandmother explained. "Little niggas in the country don't have things like we do. Oh, if I could paint, I'd paint that picture." And the children exchanged comic books. I think that in this moment we're actually supposed to, and this is a belief that I have about literature. I don't know if I mentioned this to y'all last semester, but there are schools that are censoring Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. Like they're taking it off of like school reading lists. Because parents complain that the N word is in there, and it's in there a lot. I actually think that it's okay to be sensitive, but at the same time, be aware of the context. Because there are also schools that are taking To Kill a Mockingbird off the reading list, and that's a book that's like very like, you know, black people aren't guilty of everything. We should listen to them and defend them if they're right. That's what To Kill a Mockingbird essentially states. And then Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, you have Huck Finn and Jim are like best friends. And there's literally a point in the story where Jim, or Huckleberry, Huck, he says, like there's a woman who says, "Listen, Jim is a slave. He's owned by somebody." And it says, "So what you're doing right now is against God. Like you're essentially denying this person their property." And it says, "If you don't tell us where Jim is, you're against God, so you're going to hell." And so Huck has to wrestle with this idea that, you know, he's like, if I don't tell him where Jim is, I'm going to go to hell. And that's what he says. He eventually just goes, "I just can't do it." He says, "I guess that makes me a terrible sinner. I guess I'm going to hell." So if like a kid makes the right decision thinking that he's going to hell. So like you realize that he's a good kid. And so what Mark Twain's trying to do in that book is to preserve the language of the time. So when he's got people saying the N-word, he has them saying it to preserve like what it sounded like then. He wants people to kind of know. And if you go back and read it now, like he even preserves like the language. And a lot of people say, "Oh, that was racist," but he's trying to preserve like the cadence of speech so you know what it sounded like, as well as like the language people would have used. So I think here when she uses this word, and like when you hear her say it, the N-word, and it stings to the ears, like you go, ooh, like she wouldn't want you to mark it out with a marker, because that's like denying that moment in time its truth. That's like pretending it never happened. You become those kind of people who are, you know, don't want to vaccinate because what does it really do for us? When 100 years ago, it eradicated all the diseases that you don't know exist anymore. Measles is back. Did you know it was declared eradicated in like the 80s? Gone. But Washington drops below 95% herd immunity, and suddenly it's back. Or was it Oregon? I can't remember. But so there's like a little community went down to like 93%. Boom, it's back. Because people have no sense of history and they don't want to remember things. If you get rid of all the uncomfortable stuff and pretend like it didn't happen, now you have Holocaust deniers. Did you know that every time there's a school shooting, there are people called truthers who pretend like they say that it was orchestrated by the government to make guns look bad?
What?
Yeah.
What?
Like the school shootings aren't even really happening.
It makes no sense.
I've heard about that before.
But so I think that it's important that you'll notice that there are times when I will and won't read words like this from a story. It like depends on if in the moment I think that it, like if I'm talking about it afterwards, I won't. But if I'm reading it in the moment, I will. Interestingly, people get really bothered by the N-word, which is like, yes, it's bad. But you're supposed to realize in this moment, like it's a condemnation of these words. Like it's the person who's writing saying this is a word that you don't use. And the reason is you look and what does grandma say just before she says the word pickaninny? Like what is she talking about? The importance of what? Respect. So she's like, literally the words right before that are, children were more respectful of their native states and their parents and everything else. People did right then. And her very next phrase is, look at the cute little pickaninny, which is a derogatory term specifically toward small black children. It was like, my wife told me that when she was in high school, that when she moved from a small town that was almost all white kids, because my wife is like 5'9", so she was like, I could move to a school and play basketball, and I could do better like a bigger school, because here I'm just dominating the competition, but I want to like go to a bigger school. So she went to Denison, and Denison had a much larger African American population, and the whole team was like black basically when she played basketball. So like they kind of started using like terms, like they were like, yeah, you're part of us, and started like they called her their little. It has the first 3 letters of the N-word and the last 3 letters of the word piglet. So they called her that. I won't say it. And she told me that when I first early on after I met her, and she said, yeah, that was my nickname on the team. And I was like, whoa, what? And she said, huh? And I explained to her, I was like, I think this is what this means. It's like you're a tiny. And she was like, oh. She's like, I never even thought about it. Which I told her white chocolate's actually pretty okay. That was their other nickname for her, was white chocolate. So, but to that word that you just heard in your head, because I wouldn't say it out loud, that's essentially the feeling this word is supposed to make you have. So when you hear this pika word, you're supposed to feel like you just heard that. It's not a one-to-one relationship. I'm saying like that emotional feeling that you had in hearing that word was kind of supposed to be similar. Like small N-word child is essentially what you're supposed to kind of hear. So it's definitely telling us in this moment that the grandma is a horrible person. Beyond just the things that, and this is, I've had a lot of students before tell me, I didn't really hate the grandma. Like, yeah, but she's doing just those things that grandmas do. And I was like, what? But that's because maybe you're in Texas and you have just kind of a racist grandma. And you don't want to think, well, my racist grandma is horrible. Like, nobody wants to think that. You're like, she's just old and she'll learn eventually, or she'll die. And then, that age will go away. But yeah, it's because you don't want to think of your grandma as like a bad person. She's probably not a bad person. Just because it says a couple of things, like, I don't know. That's up to you to decide. But this character, we're supposed to think she's bad on purpose. And that's why it's said when it's said. And that's why I would read it when I read it and not go like, oh, I'm not going to look at that word. I feel like, did I ever tell y'all the story about the school that wanted its children to truly feel a sense of what it was like to live in the civil rights era? Did I tell y'all about that?
Yeah.
No?
I saw the meme about it.
Saw the meme. So what happened was there was a school, and they decided they wanted to I think these kinds of lessons are actually not a terrible idea. The problem is they're very unethical to most people. But to get people to truly feel what they're supposed to feel and to understand something, sometimes it takes like an ethical. I'm gonna give you a small example first. So when my brother was like 4 or 5, he was in like church Bible class, and the teacher was trying to teach them about like being giving to others, right? And she gives them all a piece of candy. So she says, I'm gonna give you all a piece of candy. And she's like, oh wait, I forgot. There are other little kids who don't get to have candy. And they kind of need candy too. Would you like to give your candy to the little kids who don't get to have candy? Because I can go give it to them. And some of the kids were like, yeah, I'll do that. And my brother was like, no, I want my candy. And there was like 6 kids in the room. And he was like one of 2 that kept their candy. And the teacher goes, okay. And they gave their candy back to her. And she went, oh, actually, you know what? The good Lord rewards those who give. So I'm going to give you all 3 pieces of candy now for being so giving. My brother was pissed. I think pissed. It kind of presented more as crying. My dad, though, he got pissed. He was like, that's not right. They should have told him, what was it? And I was like, I don't know. I feel like he kind of got the point. Like the fact that he cried, he'll remember that. I remember it. And I wasn't even part of it. So it's like some of those, like, while it's kind of a slightly traumatic memory, it sort of taught a good lesson, Sometimes trauma's a great teacher. Not always the bad trauma, but small doses of acceptable trauma, It's those things we remember. But there was this school that decided to do something similar, but probably should have told parents first, and the parents would have said no. Maybe that's why they didn't. But what they did was they said, well, we're going to relive the civil rights era for 2 days of school. And what they did was kind of you can only use this certain water fountain, and certain kids didn't get to play outside at recess. Everybody was separated in the classroom, and some people got to use all the colors, and some people were able to use a pencil. Those sorts of things. So essentially, like, taking it back to like civil rights era classroom. And the problem I think here was, there's a lot of problems here. What they did was, it's a nice idea, right, to get them to feel like what it was like. They didn't tell the parents ahead of time. So the kids, they go through that day, and the very first day they were going to do the traditional way, the way it was. So it was all the minority kids were the ones who were kind of on the downside of things, and all the white kids were, getting all the privileges. Then the parents got pissed and said, "What are you doing?" And like the kids come home, and they're like, some of them are crying, and then they were like, "It was a terrible day at school, Mom. It was awful." And then the parents get all pissed, and the school, they hear nothing but like tons of phone calls about it. So they say, okay, we obviously didn't think this through, so we're going to cancel the whole thing. I thought the big problem here was they never did the flip day.
Yeah.
They only gave the minority kids a horrible day and never gave the white kids their horrible day. So it's kind of just being like, this is what it used to be like. Sorry. It was supposed to be like, the whole point was like day 2 was flip day, where now they all have the privileges and you all don't have the privileges. Because that's what they did in the unethical eye color experiment. Did y'all ever hear about that? Whereas the teacher said, we're going to discriminate against each other. It was like, do you understand what it's like, discrimination? They were like, yeah. She was like, do you really? They were like, yeah. And then she said, well, we're gonna judge people today by the color of their eyes. And so she separated into blue eyes and brown eyes. And there was apparently enough where it was almost even. And I was like, that many blue-eyed kids, really? But it was a classroom almost completely left with like white children, so I think that's one of the reasons she was able to do that. But the kids started just being mean and nasty to each other. It was crazy. Like, and that's one of those reasons that they call that like an unethical experiment, is because you do it to teach the kids kind of a real lesson, but in teaching the real lesson, it causes them to realize something about themselves and experience a little bit of trauma. So I do think that there are lessons like that are sort of traumatic and teach things the right way. But I think that the literature is supposed to sort of be like that too. It's supposed to make us uncomfortable and to sort of expose us to those realities. So when schools are removing To Kill a Mockingbird and Mark Twain from their lists, I think that that's completely backwards thinking. And they wonder, well, why is racism back? Well, because nobody's telling them about it anymore. They're pretending like it never happened. Everybody's like, Martin Luther King. And they were like, what did he do again? He had a dream, I think. What was his dream? I don't know. It's to stop something. We're not allowed to talk about it. And then nobody knows what it was anymore, right? I mean, it's kind of like everybody pretends like we never did bad things. What now?
We never talked about that.
About what? And like what he actually did?
No, like we know, but like at school, like we never.
I mean, why would, like, we don't even take any of the history classes so far that would even encompass what Martin Luther King did.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Not like y'all. Like, I know about it. Like, I know everything that happens. I've gone to like museums and stuff that are about that, and, because I'm really interested.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of people who don't. Like, and schools don't even talk about it anymore.
Y'all haven't talked about Martin Luther King in school yet? Like the civil rights era? I feel like I learned about that in like 5th and 6th grade.
Yeah, like those terms. Like, yeah, but like in high school, nobody. I
guess I don't remember the exact dates and things, but I remember what it was about.
Yeah.
And then you see movies about it as you get older, which is probably what I remember most of my stuff from. It's probably the movies I've watched. And just ways that it's popped up in books and literature since then. Interesting. But that's the problem when you they're like, we're just not going to talk about this anymore. This is a really uncomfortable time for us. But like, I think that's the problem they're having in Germany right now, is there are Holocaust deniers who live in Germany, and their grandparents are getting pissed. They're like, no, this happened. They were like, no, it didn't. We don't, like, it's just a conspiracy to make us look bad. And they're like, oh my gosh, why are we surrounded by idiots? But it's not that they're idiots. It's that they remove uncomfortable things from people so they don't have to look at them. And then if you have no sense of history, you don't remember. Yeah. It's not denial. It's never being taught. It's easy to deny something you've never been taught. Right?
It's different when you just hear about it rather than go.
That's why I think people don't want to vaccinate now, because they've heard about autism from that Playboy chick recently.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I use the word chick. My wife calls girls chick all the time, and so does another good friend that I have. So I really shouldn't use that word, but I generally use the language of the people that I love. So I just stay away from people I love who are more racist. Or bigoted. No, luckily I have a family that's not really involved in that kind of stuff. But crap, what was I saying? Oh, so I think that because people have heard autism might be associated with vaccines recently, that to them stings more than realizing that we kind of eradicated polio. They were like, what's polio? FDR had it. Okay. I don't know what that is. I just know that I don't like needles, and my kids cry when they get them. And autism's bad, so no vaccines. I think part of the problem too is people think that it's chemicals in the body. They're like, I don't want to put chemicals in my child's body. But I think if you realize what's really going on, it's kind of a natural thing. Essentially, what you're trying to do is you're trying to take a natural process and just kind of make that available to everybody. You essentially you take the dead form of the illness that the body can fight off. You put that in people so that they can also have the things that'll help them fight it off. You know, it's kind of like, it's like giving everybody a defense strategy, but it's like for cells. So they're like, oh, so if this comes, this is how we attack it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, but then you have to have herd immunity, which means almost everybody has to have the vaccination or it comes back. It doesn't infect people who are immune, it affects the other people. But anyways. Other things about this story. Yeah, we're supposed to hate the grandma, essentially, is what I was getting with all that. Grandma is supposed to be somebody that we don't like. Did you find effective or interesting that the story starts out as a goofy comedy with kind of like a racist, disrespectful grandma who's very selfish and wants everything to go her way and starts herself into everything and then suddenly flips to like everybody gets murdered? Like, did you like that switch or did you find it like off-putting or were you like, wait, am I still reading the same story?
I got everything really led into everything.
No, because I didn't expect them to die. Like, why did
I
grandma
didn't
die
expect
first?
them to die either.
Well, if the grandma dies first, the story's over.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, good.
I think it's also like kind of, is anybody working in like a retail store or like even a fast food? Anybody? Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, well, where do you work?
At the Crocs store.
Y'all have a lot of customers there?
We do, actually.
Where is this? Is this?
It's in Terrell. I sold like $3,000
There's
Crocs the other day.
There's a store that sells only Crocs?
It just sells Crocs.
Crocodiles?
I'd rather buy those than.
You sold what Crocs?
Post Malone.
No, like the how are they Post Malone Crocs? They have a picture of them on them?
Look it up. No.
They have Post Malone collabed with Crocs, and he made a pair of Crocs.
They're like
And they were like limited edition.
We didn't get them in our store.
They're worth the money.
They were just
Limited edition.
Aren't these just those crappy shoes?
Yeah.
Ones with the holes
But
in
it's
them,
limited edition.
I'm really confused. Is this just like a supply and demand thing? That's Crocs?
Yeah, they're like.
Oh, I thought they were like the holy thing.
You think Crocs are weird, right?
No, listen.
You think they're weird, right? Like you have a weird image, like they're associated with like weirdness and cringiness.
Well, now I didn't know they made shoes like that.
Okay, but now like everyone loves them. Is that not weird?
It's very strange.
Everyone's supposed to love them now.
Yes, those. Yeah, those.
They make like.
But those even look better than the ones that I'm familiar with. It looks like it's just like some guy was out back of his house and had some plastic left over and went, I'm going to shape this into a shoe shape like I'm a Danish person with a piece of wood. That's what the original Crocs I thought kind of looked like, right? They did not like that where somebody's actually made a shoe shape out of it.
Like when you were little and you got Crocs, you would cry, and now it's like
I wasn't even. They did exist when I was little.
you had to have Crocs.
Yeah. I realized who was it? Was it Lynn who said when your birthday was on your discussion post? And I realized, I went, wait, many of you and most of you probably were born after 9/11. I was like, that's.
I was in
in the womb in 9/11. So it's your fault, though. My whole point of bringing all of that up is anybody who works in retail, maybe things have changed in the last couple of years since I worked at Hastings, but if somebody comes in and, like, let's say somebody wants to return their Crocs and you have a return policy, and they say, like, you say, we can't take these back, or something like that, and they, like, no, you're going to take these back. Is it like the louder they get and the more they scream and there are other customers present, the more things are likely to get done their way?
Yeah.
Yeah. But whereas if you go, please, I followed the rules, and you're like, sorry, we can't do that. And they're like, okay, bye. You're not going to do anything for them. But the person who starts screaming at you in the store is more likely to get what they want because they're causing a problem in the store. We don't want to cause a scene.
Wait, are you talking about the grandma?
And yeah, so I'm saying like the grandma, that's why she didn't get shot first, because she's the one, no, hold on, wait. And so they're like, okay, kill her last, I guess. Let her keep talking, get it all out. Because everybody who's quiet, they're like, well, they're easier to kill. Let's just drag them over here first. So you think, oh, cooperate, that's going to be better. But in those type of situations, cooperation is probably not the best.
Yeah.
So guys, if you're ever in the middle of the woods and somebody pulls out a gun and is going to try to rob you and says, walk over here with me, probably not the best thing to just cooperate, depending on the circumstance, actually. So I don't know like actual procedures, what police would suggest in these scenarios.
I've watched a lot of movies. They're good.
What?
Watched a lot of movies.
Watched a lot of movies, yeah. Oh, it's only 9:05. Cool. So yeah, imagine that's why she wasn't killed first.
Don't go to the woods. Don't run upstairs and get your car wrecked. Don't go run up behind some sharp objects and shit.
Now with this story, I think it's important to note that the author was Catholic, and she went to, I think, a Catholic girls' university, either that or just a females' university, but she got her degree there, and she was a very strong Catholic like her whole life, and so she's a person who is religious writing this story. The other book we used to have had like some essays she wrote right afterwards. Does this have that? I didn't assign it. From Mystery and Manners. No, not there. Not there. Is this the one where she literally says like... Let me see. Is this the paragraph on 1021 where it says... I suppose the reasons for this is the author herself. I suppose the reasons for the use of so much violence in modern fiction will differ with each writer who uses it. But in my own stories, I have found that violence is strangely capable of returning my characters to reality and preparing them to accept their moment of grace. Grace. Their heads are so hard that almost nothing else will do the work. This idea that reality is something to which we must be returned at considerable cost is one which is seldom understood by the casual reader, but it is one which is implicit in the Christian view of the world. I don't want to equate the misfit with the devil. I prefer to think that, however unlikely this may seem, the old lady's gesture, like the mustard seed, will grow to be a great crow-filled tree in the misfit's heart, and will be enough of a pain to him there to turn him into the prophet he was meant to become, but that's another story. That was her own view of the misfit, is that what all these things he really thought was like his true, like, he's like, really does have an interesting conception of Christianity, and he wants to like have good thoughts, but he's just wrapped in this strange bit of chaos, and that the grandmother will actually say something that will take hold, and then later he'll end up becoming a true like great thinker of God, which is not at all how I read the story.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if an author is allowed to tell us exactly the way we were supposed to think about the story. I don't know. It's very strange to me. I feel like none of this is going to stick with him.
She was, yeah, like, no, but like she was trying to convince him. Like the whole time, y'all see that she was trying to get out of bed, but I see that she was trying to convince him because that was her son. Like she was
I don't see it that way.
Me too.
You don't see it like that? That's why she's convincing him. Y'all see it as a negative way. We see it as like the logical way.
In fact, I believe that, I don't know if she says this here, but I think there's another place in which Flannery O'Connor says that he was not meant to be her son. But I can't remember where that was. It's not in this.
He's not her son.
What did y'all think about that last line of the story?
Oh yeah, it kind of ended like.
Oh, it ain't no pleasure.
Huh?
It ain't no pleasure.
Not that one. The one about her. It's not the last line. It's one of the last lines. It's she'd have been a good woman if there'd been someone to shoot her every day of her life.
Yeah, because she talked so much. She talking about.
I guess she had consequences for the way she acted, that she'd be better.
Yeah.
Like all the time.
Yeah.
What?
So she's a good person when she shuts up.
So maybe.
I think she's a good, like, I guess everybody becomes a slightly better person than they are if somebody's pointing a gun at their face. Maybe.
I think that's true.
Like if you're about to be shot all the time.
You're 9.
And you realize like you might die, you probably will do better. You'll probably act a little better.
Oh, okay, now I understand. I'm like, you're just gonna put someone in that situation, you're just gonna point.
Like you've probably heard of deathbed Christians before, right? The people who are like, they're dying and like they're about to die, like they say like, yeah, you'll probably die within the hour, and they're like,
I accept Jesus now.
yeah, like I accept Jesus now. So that's kind of what she seems to be doing at the end of the story, being like, yes, let's make you into a good person, misfit. That's what we need to do in this moment. Although he says, what does he say? And I think when she says good, he says good woman.
He's like trying to convince her not to think that way, like, and he like says things that aren't true, but it makes you think about it, like.
Yeah, it says like here in paragraph 135 on page 1019, it says, he says, Jesus was the only one that ever raised the dead, and he shouldn't have done it. He's thrown everything off balance. If he did what he said, then it's nothing for you to do but throw away everything and follow him. And if he didn't, then it's nothing for you to do but enjoy the few minutes you got left best you can by killing somebody or burning down his house or doing some other meanness to him. No pleasure but meanness, he said, and his voice had become almost a snarl. And it's like, he basically says if Jesus had raised the dead, then the only pleasure you could get out of life was the pleasure in meanness. And so she's like, well, how do I keep him from being mean? And she says, maybe he didn't raise the dead, the old lady mumbled, not knowing what she was saying and feeling so dizzy that she sank down the ditch with her legs twisted under. I wasn't there, so I can't say he didn't. But basically, it seems like she's throwing away her entire belief system for the possibility of living, which I think he's saying she's a good woman in that moment because she's being honest with herself. What do you really believe? And she's like, just whatever keeps me alive. And I think that's maybe what he meant. It was not a good woman, but an honest woman.
Like, kind of crazy. Like, no, what he said, like, nah, I'm not getting into that. Never mind.
Oh, you're about to go to, like, real religion stuff, right?
Yeah, like, nah.
But I don't know, it's kind of like, you ever wonder, like, in that moment of, like, truth, of, like, a dangerous moment that you're in, like, if you would be a better person? I don't know. A more honest person. I'd like to never find out, that's for sure.
They're more like a better person if they would die.
Realer?
In a moment like I feel like in the problem with in those shootings, like the school shootings, right? Everybody can sort of be themselves, or like you can put on that front when it's a drill. You're like, oh, I'm supposed to get in line, I'm supposed to walk out the door, I'm supposed to do what I'm supposed to do. But in the actual moment of the shooting, everybody becomes their real self. You know, like The Walking Dead. Everybody becomes who they really are when there's no longer the social construct to rely on, when everything's gone to crap. You become who you really are.
Black Friday videos when they like open the door and like there's no control over the crowd and they just literally stomp over people.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen One Tree Hill before?
What?
Have you ever seen One Tree Hill before?
I wanted to start watching
There's
it.
I haven't seen it, but I hate it.
Episode.
Okay.
What?
Okay. I haven't seen
It's
it.
the best it's the best TV show.
I'm sure it must be.
I've ever watched in my life.
Probably better than Breaking Bad. Or 90 Day Fiance.
Nah, Breaking Bad.
Oh my gosh,
it's honestly.
That's up
My
there.
mom has
One Tree Hill.
a single 90 day fiance, whatever.
So does my mom.
Anyways, there's a school shooting. They get locked in the room and they all like start bickering and like showing their true colors.
They did a school shooting on One Tree Hill too?
Yeah.
They did on the Fosters too, my wife. We should watch
Okay,
that.
no, One Tree Hill.
One Tree Hills was better than
Yeah,
the Foster's
yeah.
stuff.
I'm sorry, are we really arguing over who had the better school shooting in their show?
Yeah.
Is that what we just...
I watched Ghost in the
One Tree Hill, you need to watch One Tree Hill, honestly.
Here's something, it's interesting. I've wanted to like, y'all remember last semester we had the Zimbardo video, right? Where it was the guy talking about what people makes people monsters, right? He's talking about like what makes people go evil. He was talking about developing hero schools with this certain guy where like basically people learn heroic behaviors. I've always thought it'd be really interesting when you're teaching like civics to kids or like, what do they call like your citizenship? Did they still do that in school? Citizenship award?
Oh, like
or like citizenship grade?
Yeah.
But essentially making sure you're a good person, so it's like getting behavioral grades. But like for example, like if there was a test where y'all talked about like y'all talked in class about, I don't know, being helpful, and then intentionally that one day, like a teacher held your class over so you only had like 2 minutes to get to the next one. And it was too far to go. But on the way, there was somebody waiting to like drop all their books in front of you and like have everything spill out on the floor and they need help picking it up. And like the real test is to see if you walk by them or if you help them pick it up. And then you get to class and it's like, well, you failed the quiz, you failed the quiz, you failed the... Oh, what quiz? Well, it was a girl outside who dropped all of her crap and you didn't help her. What? Right? So it's like, I've always felt like, you know, that would be kind of like, because we always talk about like, you know, who are we really? And like we, you know, posture and say like, oh, it's important to be a good person. But then somebody would drop their crap and we'd be like, but I've got somewhere to be and they'll probably be able to pick it up, right? We see somebody on the side of the road with a flat tire. They're like, I'm sure somebody's going to stop and help them. Or they've got a cell phone. They probably already called somebody. You know, we always do irrational things in our head like this is the reason why I'm not being a good person right now.
It's called an excuse.
I'm afraid of my kid. So really you're more distrustful and fearful of people. But I've always thought that would be like an interesting way to teach. But again, that's like trauma-based teaching in a weird way. Like, you know, it's like, but you can't just tell me like I'm a bad person for not picking something up in the hall. No, but I can tell you are a good person if you did. I don't know. I've always thought that while that's risky, I don't know. I thought it was a good idea. But anyways, y'all have a good one. This is weird stuff to talk about. Fun stuff, though, to talk about. Did y'all learn some English stuff and do some things?
Yeah.
Did y'all enjoy the English journey?
Are we going to talk about...
I meant to talk about the literature. That was the English journey.
Battle Royale was good.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about Battle Royale next time, yeah. The lottery we may talk about. I don't like that one as much. Yes.
I didn't put my name on it. I already turned it in. Is that okay?
As long as if you turned it in from your account, then I would know that it's you just from... It's associated with your student ID, so that's not a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Yes. About discussion posts?
It was both of them. I missed both of them.
You missed both of them? Which one? Discussion post 0, 1, or 2?
No, I missed the discussion post and the quiz.
Oh, okay, yeah, the quiz I can reopen, but the discussion post you'll have to wait till later. But because you told me ahead of time, it's not going to be a partial credit for you. You just have to like, when the time comes and you do it at the later date, because there's going to be a date later in the semester when I open up the discussion post. I can't open discussion posts as we go. I can reopen a quiz. I can't reopen a discussion post because basically what I have to do is reopen it for everybody, and there's nothing I can do to restrict everybody from going back in and doing it. But like basically what you'll do is when I reopen those discussion posts later for people to do them, you'll just have to remind me that you had emailed me about that one in the past. Yeah, but basically people who don't email me about that ahead of time, they get to do it, but for partial credit, but you'll get to do it for full credit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, everybody. Nice and warm in here, toasty warm.
Yeah. Mr. Nichols,
Yes.
help me with something?
Yes.
So I did my essay on my MacBook, but I don't know if I print it off in the library downstairs.
Well, 1, you don't actually need to print it off at all.
Okay.
2, you just submit it on Blackboard, which I can show y'all how to do today in class.
Okay.
Yeah. That's part of the lesson, actually. That's good. Somebody smells like when I was in high school. Like it was something somebody's wearing that smells the same as what people wore in my high school. But I don't know.
I smell nothing.
I don't know. It just smells like cologne-ish. It very well could be a cough drop that I'm just smelling as a cologne. Okay, so let's turn this off for the last class. Working on discussion posts. I'm almost done with the zeros. Last night I think I almost got food poisoning from lettuce.
Was it wrong?
Like my wife ate salad, and like we both had salad. Like it was one of those prepackaged ones from Walmart. We both had it. My daughter ate very little of it. She said her stomach didn't hurt. My wife ate some, and her stomach hurt a little bit. I ate like probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the salad. It was a Caesar salad, so good. And afterwards, I was like, oh, and then like all the way until probably like midnight, I was just sitting there trying to grade, but going, oh, and I graded some people's stuff. I was like, hi, how are you? It's nice to meet you. Oh. And then I fell asleep trying to like not throw up. And then what happened was, the music made me feel like that. Then I ended up.
Is this a dog ate your homework while I was trying to grade it excuse?
No, it was I fell asleep trying to not throw up excuse. And then at 4 in the morning when I woke up, I was like, oh gosh, I feel fine now.
Was it worth it? Was the salad worth it?
It's still really good. I probably want another one. I don't even know if it was a salad that was it could have just been like, my wife said, you might have just got too full. And I was like, that is possible.
Like a month there was like a wrinkle on romaine lettuce.
I know, that's what I was thinking. Like maybe it could have been the lettuce. But she felt her stomach was hurting a little too, but she had never bad enough to throw up. But she's got the weaker stomach, so you'd think that I don't know. And I couldn't grade a whole lot on Saturday or this weekend either because I had to go pick up my daughter in Frisco on Sunday, and I told my wife not to do this again. I mean, she can still do this when there's not a whole lot to grade, but Saturday we had Valentine's photos, which are apparently a thing with a child. I mean, I know Christmas, Easter, those are things. But now there's Valentine's photos. I was like, when's it going to stop? Mother's Day photos, Father's Day photos, Columbus Day photos. I mean, when are we going to stop having photos for everything? I mean, it's like holidays that don't exist. Black Friday photos, I'm assuming, are coming. No, those are Thanksgiving photos. Pumpkin photos. We have so many photos of the child. It's insane. And then after that was the daddy-daughter dance, which my wife wanted me to go to, which we ended up not doing a whole lot of dancing. And I had to be like, I was like not just hanging out with her. I was at the Children's Museum. I was also the cameraman. I was also making sure she had fun. Making sure she didn't run into the little pony area with the little miniature pony that people could pet and get a picture with, which we did not do because all the dads just stood there just waiting in line. I felt terrible. They should have just let their kids play, but instead most dads spent the night waiting in lines because their wives said, don't you come home without a picture of my daughter petting a pony. And my wife was like, just have fun. She's like a toddler. So, but she kept texting me with picture ideas, and I was like, don't worry. But anyways, that took up my whole Saturday. Whole Saturday was gone. So Sunday I graded a little bit of discussion posts. Mostly I had to work on the videos I didn't get a chance to do on Friday because I was making another video that was supposed to take the place of jury duty, which is what I had on Monday. It was a big weekend and week. I had to you realize how hard it is to go through old videos to find a video that'll work in place of me being there? With no group projects, so I had to go find specific semesters that had me not talking about a group project. It was rough. Additionally, there was something that I spent far more time than I should have on Friday, which you're going to see. Would somebody turn the 2 left light switches off just temporarily? We'll turn them back on. But I felt that it was unfair that I spent so much time on Friday working on this, probably a good 2 hours to make a minute of video. But I thought that the students who were gone on Monday, or who came here on Monday and wanted to get counted on attendance, despite me not being here, I wanted to at least give them something for me not being here at jury duty and them showing up. So I made something that I'll let you see as well. It's not here. It's not there. Where is it? Oh, it's right here. Camtasia Studio. Where is it? Right here? Yeah. I think the sound's up. It's absolutely silly. So just prepare yourself. If you're not somebody who likes silliness, you may not like this at all.
Here we go, gonna learn some stuff. We're gonna have lots of fun with English names. We're gonna go on an English journey.
for it?
No, it's actually not on YouTube. So I didn't add it to the YouTube. The only time you'll ever see this is now. I may put it on other videos, but I'm not guaranteeing that I will.
Did you ever host like your own show back in the 90s or something?
No, I actually just typed cheesy 80s video opener into YouTube, and that's what came up, and then I just changed it all to my stuff.
You should have like the first time slot.
So I apologize for those of you who thought it was a complete and total waste of time. You're right. But those of you who did not find it to be a waste of time and who found it to be funny, I thought that you should at least get a chance to see that. The rest of the day we'll just be talking about literature anyway, so that was at least a minor excursion. We can turn the lights back on. It's just discussion from here on out. Although there's part of me that... Go ahead and turn it on. There's part of me that kind of wants to leave the light off, and that psychological trick we have for ourselves that makes us feel like it's cooler even though it's not. Like, oh, it's dark. It must be cooler. Right?
I agree.
I don't know what it is, but we feel like cooler. But no, we're just all going to feel super hot. Because it's what it is. I think what happens is actually they control temperature from remote locations. I don't know if that's the case, but I always thought that's one of the reasons they do that is so it saves electricity, right? Because obviously the air is not on right now, and if it is, it's terrible. I don't know what's going on. It's super duper hot. I feel like the misfit out here. It was hot that day too, wasn't it, in the story?
Like 2 seconds, I thought you referenced it and I wasn't sure.
Yeah, like what misfit he's talking about. So, actually first I will take like any questions people have. I'm going to continue to grade the discussion post. The paper's going to be due tonight, but I'm not going to grade your papers first. I'll probably only be grading them until at the earliest on Sunday and most likely next weekend with the essays. Yeah.
It's on the learning curve. It's not working. I don't know.
Any of them?
Just me, like it says English comp section, so it's not available. It's not working for me either.
Does it show that same screen where it's just like words at the top? Interesting. Because I've turned on the course and made it associated, so I don't know what would keep it from working.
Well, I was having issues with Blackboard earlier today too, so I think Blackboard's just kind of going through a glitch.
I mean, I can check and see what Magnus Baraka sees, but it's probably not going to be the same thing you see because he doesn't have a code. Where's my Magnus Baraka window? Do I have one? I think I closed it, so we'll just open a new one.
Well, when I typed in my username and password, when I typed it in, I would press enter, but it wouldn't go. But it's like it wouldn't go through. And when I tried to access like the going into the quizzes and going into the essay, because I tried to submit it earlier, it wouldn't actually pull it up. It wouldn't pull up the actual page to where I could turn it in. Still, I was having that issue last period as well.
It's weird, because this is working, so I can get here. Can y'all go into Launchpad manually and work on it there? Has anybody tried that? To go to Launchpad's website?
I have another class that uses Launchpad, and like your class wasn't in it, so I was not.
Really?
I have a question for this.
I'll look into that.
That's over the first 3 readings, right?
It could be any of the readings as long as we read them before Antigone. So it can be anything. So I'll look into the Launchpad issue. If somebody will email me, if you have already emailed me about the Launchpad issue, I'll take a look at it based on that email. If nobody's emailed me yet, they'll go ahead and send me an email saying Launchpad's doing weird stuff. With the assignment, it says the first one is over the fiction, the one that's due week 3, day 1, and the one over week 7, day 2 is over the drama. And so the drama one has to be over Antigone. There's no options there. But that means anything before Antigone is fiction. So if you look on the syllabus page or at the syllabus and in the course calendar, which is just a little bit down, Antigone doesn't come until week 5. So anything before Antigone is something you can write about. So that includes what we talk about when we talk about love, paper menagerie, Chekhov's Lady with the Pet Dog, the rich brother, the ones who walk away from Omelos, Soldier's Home, the things they carried, Good Man is Hard to Find, Battle Royal, the lottery, Rose Friendly, A Current Style, Creek Bridge, or the yellow wallpaper. Those are all options for the census analysis essay 1. Only option for census analysis essay 2 will be Antigone, and the census analysis essay 3 has to be written about poetry, and poetry is everything that comes after Antigone. So it's kind of like you can just use your Antigone as the midpoint for the whole course for the essays. Antigone's census analysis 2, anything before it's number 1, anything after is number 3. Did that clarify? Anything we read before week 4, before week 5 can be written for this. Yeah, anything from week 1, 2, 3, or 4 would be fine. Granted, we haven't read anything from week 3 or week 4 yet, but you're still allowed to write over it. So that's an option. And anybody who writes about lottery, you can't mention Hunger Games or Divergent.
I didn't see how you even
in your
got
essay.
that out of that story. Like, I don't understand how anybody would have talked about that. I don't understand that story very well.
It's because of the fact that it's just
Is it the
people
fact
killing
that
other
if you
people
like
for survival.
pick a thing out of a box and that's what they do in the Hunger
Not that.
Games is they pick a name?
Yeah,
I
that.
was super confused.
Yeah, that's the only reason you would have been able to write about it, is because a name gets picked and then somebody has to be involved with something that'll probably kill them. That's basically what happens in the lottery too. Every place has something that they're doing supposedly, where they draw a name and then somebody dies.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that story was completely pointless. Like, I didn't understand it at all. While I was reading it, I was like.
Strangely, I feel similarly. I don't find it to be that interesting.
I didn't understand why they were just picking names, and then all of a sudden they threw these stones at a girl. Like, I was super confused.
I think it left you with more questions.
Yeah.
You had a ton of questions after you're done.
Like, why didn't we?
I feel like it was just super easy to guess what was gonna happen. Like the second I started reading this,
I didn't. I had no idea.
I started that and I was like, I can tell already what's gonna happen. Like this is.
We read that last semester lottery.
Yeah, and it was assigned in my class for 1301 as well, because it's also in the patterns book.
Yeah.
So you may have read it, yeah, last semester. But I feel the same way. I mean, some people pointed out that it could be like this weird kind of agricultural ritual, like it was to have good crop yield or something. Like that's mentioned in the story, but in terms of like why it's something that happens, it's not really well explained in the story, and I think on purpose.
Part of the discussions people said that.
I wanted to be able to grade it on the discussions on Sunday night, but I wanted to get those discussion post zeros done first, because I don't want to let them just sit. So I'm still working on getting those done. But they said that it felt like it was supposed to leave you with questions. A lot of students said that.
No, the good fortune for crops and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Somebody made mention of ancient something or another. I can't remember exactly anymore, but.
Is that something that's listed in the text, like in the side readings, or is that something that comes specifically from SparkNotes?
It says that the oldest
or Wikipedia.
Oldest man in the city or village has been doing it since he was a child.
But I always find it strange that a lot of people focus on the agricultural element. When I read it, I don't like, that's not something that gathers my attention. I'm paying attention to, that's why I feel like a lot of people who point that out, and I'm not saying that you're necessarily the case, like a lot of people feel like they don't feel comfortable when they read a piece of literature and they don't get it, just not getting it. So they go over to SparkNotes or Wikipedia and see what it has to say. And what happens is usually scholars or those who are working on analyzing a piece of literature, they're going to pay specific attention to the little minor details that are in it and only focus on those things. So that when you go to Wikipedia or SparkNotes, it often will tell you, this literature is all about these little tiny minor details that pop up for like a half second. And then that's what the students end up focusing on as well. Like, oh, it must all be about this one little tiny thing. And I feel like the real value in literature is not in its particulars, but in the wholeness of it, like what it's trying to say about who we are, not in, I think it was to, provide agricultural health. Like, I mean, what does the reason matter? It doesn't really. The fact that they're doing this at all, that's to me kind of what matters. The fact that at some point somebody went, you know what we should start doing? Having people draw lots out of a box or a hat or whatever the community does, and then we just kind of kill that person.
And there's my first question of why.
Like, why does this become a thing? Interestingly, and this is something like that if you take me for Brit-Lit, like if you, by the way, I don't know if anybody knows this, but everybody has to have a humanities course for part of their core. Did y'all know that? So everybody has to have English 1301, 1302. The only people who don't have to have 1302 is like if you're a nursing major, and no, you can't just drop my class now and get out of this class. But it's only certain nursing majors. It's not all of them. It's like, I think, maybe like radiology tech don't have to have 1302, maybe like one other. But that's just because it's a certificate program, not an associate's program. If you do an associate's program, you still have to have it. So humanities core is something everybody has to have, and that can be done by a Brit-Lit 1, a Brit-Lit 2, an American Lit 1, American Lit 2. I don't teach the American Lits, only Brit-Lits. And I teach them on this campus. American Lits are taught either off campus or through ITB or online. You can also take mass communications, which... So I'm an option for humanities, and in humanities I will teach Gulliver's Travels is one of the stories we talk about, not the one with Jack Black. Not where Jack Black's going, and he's like big and they're all small. It's not that. Or what does he do? Like he says, no, I'm channeling what Adam Sandler. I'm not doing the right one. That's Jack Black, isn't it? Isn't it? Shloobity-doo. He says weird things, but what was I talking about? Gulliver's Travels. So Gulliver's Travels, there's actually a scene in the book that talks about, the guy, he's a giant, and he comes in this community of small people, and he talks to them about what they do. And there's this weird thing they have where, like, they, I guess, eat hard-boiled eggs, and they have little, you ever seen those stands for, like, eggs? And it's like, you can eat an egg, and it's like, I don't know what kind of egg you do. Is it poached that you do like that? But you, like, crack the shell, you take the shell off, and then you essentially eat the egg out of the shell. But I think it's supposed to have, like, the white part is supposed to be hard-boiled, but, like, the yellow part is supposed to be, like, liquidy, so you dip the white part in the yellow part.
I think it's just called a soft-boiled egg.
Soft-boiled egg, but it's like that little stand for it. You can eat out of it, right? Yeah. Or eat it in that stand. So in this reality, like Gulliver, he imagines where there's like, he goes to this land of tiny people. They eat eggs out of those little stands like that. It's how they eat them. And a long time ago, like a few generations back, the king's nephew, like when he was trying to get the eggshell opened, he cut his finger on it. It made him bleed. And the king decreed that all people had to stop breaking their eggs on the big end of the egg. They had to start breaking their eggs on the small end. And made it like penalty of death or some crazy thing that everybody had to do this now because he was so pissed off at the egg having hurt his nephew. And there are people like, this is stupid. Why should we change everything we've always done as a result of somebody getting hurt? And the king decreed this, and so they all, what ended up happening was like some people had to like flee the state because they refused to break their eggs on the, many books are written on the reasoning for why they do this, and actually their text said originally that you should always break the egg on the convenient end. The problem was over time it changed what the word convenient meant. So essentially they said like 3 wars had been fought over this belief. Most of the people who were still big Endians, so they're called the big end egg people, big Indians. They had now gone over to this other country, which is like their enemy, and they live with them and were taken in as shelter, and they became part of their nation. Whereas this nation over here, they are only allowed to break their eggs on the small end. But it's completely, he's pointing out the complete arbitrariness of rules and laws and things. Gulliver was writing about, or Jonathan Swift was writing that book essentially about how all of England wanted to break over the fact that, who was it, Henry wanted to divorce his wife. And he made a new religion so he could, and made himself the head of it. And then they fought wars over the fact that people wouldn't acknowledge that he was the, there was like civil war essentially going on in the shadows in England as a result of this. Like, just because a dude wanted to divorce his wife, and he was like, he thought it was so stupid that he kind of encapsulated his thought of how stupid it was into this book. And they had to like edit it out a lot because they thought he might be killed over it. But the lottery feels very similar. And it sounds to us like something that's absolutely fake. Like nobody would ever do this. Because how can you just pick a random person to die?
But it also talks about like what a problem would be if they stopped doing that, because like other places around them we're gonna stop doing that. Like they don't do it anymore. And one of the people in it said that like that would be, I don't know, something would happen or that would be a problem. Like that can never happen.
They said that like we did living in caves again.
Yeah,
they said some communities aren't doing this anymore. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. But like, why would that be ridiculous to stop doing that? Like, why would you go back to living in caves?
I want to know why they have an entire page over a black box.
Like explaining the black box. The wood chippings and
yeah, everything. Like, this is this box. It's really important. There's 3 paragraphs over here.
I feel like, this is not something I should say. I just won't say it.
Mark it.
I think I might say it.
Well, you have to now.
I feel like most of my classes, when it comes to this sorts of discussion, it's almost like they're treating their belief in having to do the lottery without a sense of rationale. It's just something they've always done, right? It's something that we've always done, so we believe in it. This is what we do. Much in the way many of us approach, I'm talking about around the world, not just where we live now, not in America, but some of us, the way that we approach religion. I'm not talking about your religion, I'm talking about all the other ones. Your God is the right one. I'm talking about the other ones that are made up. Isn't that essentially what everybody believes, right? Your God's the real one. All the other ones are making theirs up. So consider I'm talking about the other religions right now. Did I talk to you guys about the guy who he studies religion for a living? Like that's what he is. He's a researcher who studies religion, its effects, how religious rules get made, those sorts of things. He studies it. And he said nobody likes him. Nobody at all. The atheists hate him. And the religious people hate him as well. The reason is because he says that essentially we had a reason for coming up with religions originally. Like there was, he said from his studies, he feels like they're man-made. Every single thing seems to indicate that men made up religions as a way to like essentially develop trade between tribes. You used to only ever know like 50 people. Like that was the max number of people you would know. That would be like your little village. But as the world became increasingly global and people started coming up with like ways to make little trinkets and things and like smelt iron and stuff like that, and people had specialties, you wanted to trade with other tribes. But how do you know that they're not just going to kill you? Think Walking Dead, right? Every tribe that's out there, the other tribes just murdered them for their stuff. So how do you trust another tribe? And they said they came up with essentially like people came up with religions and like started defining what. And if you look at like say Greek mythology, a lot of what the religious rules come from people like Homer's writings, what we know of the gods. They come from Theogony, who essentially wrote the background for their gods. And at the time they said, well, he was inspired by Zeus. Not that he was just a guy who made stuff up. So they said like, you know, if you would meet somebody from another tribe, you're like, I don't know anything about these people. And they're like, yeah, I'm totally like let's make up a god name. Like a Rockanon. Like, are you a Rockanite? Yes, I believe in Rockanon. It's like, good. Think about how many people you meet, if you share something in common, you feel like suddenly super close to them in an irrational way, right? Like if you were to like go to a new country, right? And like and everybody's speaking Japanese and you're like, oh my gosh. And I'm talking only to the Caucasians here, but you see somebody who is white in a sea of Japanese people. You see a white person, you go over and talk to them and they speak English. They could be evil and a serial murderer, but you're like, oh, an English speaking white person from America. I feel close to you now. It's completely irrational because you find somebody who shares something in common with you. And it'd be the same if like you were somebody who, you know, you have like Hispanic heritage or somebody who has like black heritage and you're in a place of different people and you're like, what do I do? And like you find somebody who shares that with you and you're like, okay, instantly bond. So originally, like they say, they're like in an area where everybody sort of looked the same anyway because they had common ancestors, and people never went out to the other tribe. They came up with religion as an idea to say that, yes, I believe in this God, I believe in this God. Now we can trade, because it's like an instant trust thing, you know. You just know, oh, okay, we share something in common. And so religious people hate the guy because it's essentially saying all religions are made up. They didn't come, they're not inspired from somebody, they just were made up by man. But he says atheists hate him too, because they've found in their studies, religion is an incredibly helpful thing. People who are religious tend to live longer, they tend to be happier. They tend to have a more positive outlook on themselves. They tend to be more confident. There are all these social benefits to religion that atheists want to pretend like don't exist. And so the guy says he essentially everybody's pissed off at him. But when I think about the lottery, I think about how it almost functions a lot like some people religion functions, where they believe something without necessarily thinking about what that means. Like the intent behind it. And when I'm talking about the egg example, think of things like this. I don't know if I want to get into the religious aspect of it. I only know my religion, right? So I only know the one that I come from. So I think of something like Christianity. I think of homosexuals and how it's Christianity, so it's supposed to be based on the teachings of Jesus, and he sort of upended everything. This is just from my perspective, right? So most of the people that I go to church with, though, they think that homosexuality is definitely wrong. And I may be wrong here, and you can correct me if I am, and I'll just stop talking. But I don't think Jesus says anything specifically about homosexuality. He does use the phrase sexual immorality. But again, when I said the egg is broken on the convenient end, the word immorality, doesn't that depend on what people consider to be immoral or moral at the time? A long time ago, we thought women cutting their hair was immoral. Now we don't. So that changed. Even though it's very clear that Paul says in the New Testament, women leave your hair long, you shouldn't have it short. So these sorts of things change over time, what we consider to be moral, not moral. So the idea of the lottery, some of these people, their ideas are changing in some of the communities, and some of these people are like, no, we have to just draw lots and one of us dies. It's illogical to think any other way. But it's because this idea has persisted throughout time. And I think what Shirley Jackson's trying to point out is that to believe in a thing and not think about it at all and what it really means is dangerous. Because that's essentially what the story is, right? To not, and I'm talking about religion anymore. I'm talking about to believe anything and not think about why you believe it is dangerous. I think of our political landscape. Everybody is on one side or the other, right? You're on my team or your team. If you're not for me, you're against me. And nobody thinks like rationally about like, well, I kind of agree with this stuff on their political landscape, but not others. Like, I kind of have these feelings on abortion, but these feelings about guns, and these feelings about taxes, and these feelings about, I don't know, what's the other stuff? Like everybody said, like, I really believe that we should support education, but I don't want to pay any taxes. Which is it? How do you believe both things simultaneously? It's something called like, what do you call it? Cognitive dissonance? When you believe two things at the same time to be true, even though they conflict with each other?
There's a lot of people like that. And it's, when it comes to something like that, it's more or less that, they want something on this side, but in order to have this, they have to do something that they don't want to do. So even though they believe they want to do this, but they don't want to do this for it, they still think that this is possible without having to do this.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think that's what I'm. Yeah, I think that's. Yeah.
Yeah, because they want something to be done, but they don't want to have to do something they don't want to do. So you want to increase.
Yeah, so you essentially come up with things that let you still do what you want to do, despite you inside telling yourself you don't really believe it, but you still want to do it.
Right.
Which is strange.
Yeah, I actually have quite a few family members that think that way. my uncle, uncle specifically, he wants to be able to keep, what he has. He wants to be able to keep his little apartment, and he wants to be able to support his family. Even though he's perfectly capable of working, he doesn't want to work. So, but because he's in California, he's going for trying to get disability. So with this situation, he wants to be able to provide for the family. He still doesn't want to work to do it.
I'm thinking of people who maybe like would believe that we shouldn't pay taxes, and that people who get on disability are deadbeats. Yet I'm on disability, but that's okay. It's different for me. Like, I'm thinking about those type of people who like, people should not get on disability. They're just a problem in the state. Oh, but I have a disability.
It's like hypocrites.
It's different. Huh?
Hypocrites.
Yeah, it's kind of like hypocrisy.
Yeah.
But before we even get to hypocrisy, you have to have somebody who thinks something without really acknowledging what that means. And I think that's what, I think she's essentially, this is like a fable, the lottery is, for that kind of thinking. Like Shirley Jackson is kind of pointing out, if you don't examine what you do or whether that's actually good for people, that's a problem. I think of like the vaccination thing right now. People are like, vaccinations are bad because they won't go through go back in the past and think, what was it like before this?
Look at our mistakes.
Yeah, look at our mistakes and learn from them. Or even like acknowledge now, like, what was it? We used to have like, I'm trying to think of something that we've definitely changed about the United States, like a requirement we used to have, which we now find is just silly. I'm having trouble thinking of one off the top of my head. Was it ever like a law that women couldn't, slavery. It was a point at which women couldn't vote, because why would they? That was kind of how they were like, why would women vote?
At the time, they were the property of the man of the household.
Yeah, it was essentially, well, the household votes, the man votes. Why would the woman?
Exactly.
And so they were like, somebody said, well, maybe women should vote because we're people. And they were like, but are you though? And there was a lot of arguments about it. And then eventually everybody kind of went, or no, half the people went, I guess women are people who deserve to vote too. And some people were rationalizing it, well, my wife's definitely going to vote the way I vote. That's for damn sure. These days we're going, that going on. And then after the, women being people, people started slowly acknowledging that African Americans are also people,
Yeah,
Now it's people are slowly acknowledging that gay people are people.
It only took over 1,000 years to do it.
In fact, I imagine gay marriage is probably the one that's probably the best example, right? Of something that people are like, well, I don't want gays getting married. Why? They don't live in your house. No, but what will that mean to my marriage? But they're not Christians. But shouldn't they be? But it's like, why would you force all of your thoughts on another person?
With that specific situation, it's just merely a matter of people not opening themselves to the possibility of someone else being happy a different way than how they happy with that.
And I think some people rationalize it in a way of like, well, if my kid sees gay people, my kid might be influenced to think that gay is okay, and they might then become gay. And it's just because they don't want their kid gay. Well, what about people who don't have children? How would they rationalize? I'm trying to figure this out.
There are definitely people that think that. I have a few gay people in my family, and there are people that are even in my family that will not spend the night in my house, or they're going to spend the night at the holidays too, because they don't want their children in class.
See, here's the thing: is I'm not necessarily saying that that's something that's not okay, because people often will believe that for religion. But because here's the tricky situation: is a lot of people believe this stuff for religious beliefs. The one thing that I have an issue with is essentially when people feel that way.
I think it's a hard issue.
But they don't want people, like, let's say in California, to get married if they're gay, because my religion doesn't agree with you getting married over there, because it's never going to actually affect you. I don't think. Like, essentially what you're saying is you don't think anybody should be allowed to have different religious beliefs than yours. It's kind of the way I'm viewing it. But I'm sure I'm not getting something, because they may have like it doesn't have to be your thoughts, but is there like another like intricacy you can think of that I'm not thinking of in the moment?
And I'm saying this through what I've heard and what I have experienced with a few of my friends and a few people I've seen on TV for the comedians or actors and all that. And they've all kind of said a very similar thing. As a and most of them are males, some of them are females, but this is just what I've come to understand. As a and I'm quoting on this one, as a heterosexual male, if I can prevent my kid from being gay, I will. But if other people want to be gay, that's perfectly fine. And that's a lot of the views a lot of people I have seen have. And it's kind of the same thing with the women I've seen making kind of statements. They just said, as a heterosexual, well, they can do whatever they want. I mean, if you want to be gay, that's fine. But as a heterosexual, if I can prevent my child from being this way, I will. And that's kind of a fear that I've been seeing recently, that coming up. Like they say, don't worry, it's okay, but they don't want it to happen to the people, like to their people, to their kids and all that.
If we're keeping this tied in with like the religious theme and Christianity, the saying for me and my family will serve the Lord is like, you guys do whatever, we'd like for you guys to be Christian too, but like, you're not supposed to, Jesus says hate the sinner, hate the sin, not the sinner.
Exactly.
Right. So you're not, like, it's okay if you're going to someone who's gay. And it's fine that I don't like that they are gay, but it's not okay for me to treat them badly because or to push them out of situations or ostracize them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where you're getting to, that's the religious perspective, but like I guess the issue I'm having, in fact I now can come up with a better example than the gay marriage thing. Here's something that I think works even better. Sunday liquor laws. Like in Texas, you can't buy liquor on Sundays. You can't buy liquor in grocery stores.
But if you have it at home already and you want to drink it on Sunday, there's no stopping it. So I don't quite understand that.
Well,
that's like people who are like, I better go buy my liquor on Saturday night because I can't buy it on Sunday. But why?
I haven't even heard of that law.
Me neither. Could be getting away.
You can't buy it.
And like,
It's hard to even buy liquor sometimes. Like,
I mean,
a lot of counties around the U.S.
But after 12 o'clock on Sundays at restaurants, you can buy alcohol with food.
Yeah.
I thought you can on Sundays, or Sunday after 12, you just can't buy like hard liquor and stuff.
But you can. But still, the question remains, why?
Yeah, and that's part of what makes
Somebody wants to get involved.
And it's different for every state. You like if you're going to travel to another state, you better look up their laws ahead of time if you think you're going to go drink.
It's the same way you can't buy beer or wine or anything like that unless it's possibly.
The only thing I can think that it originally was put in place for is it's not right to drink on the Lord's Day on Sunday.
Yeah, because when you look at the Texas officials, a majority of them are Baptist. A lot of them are Baptist, and then there's Methodist.
I can't speak to that, but I do know that most elected officials do identify as Christian.
Yes, because
we've never had a president who didn't identify as Christian.
Yeah, because when I was going through the Texas government, that was one of the things that we were taught, was a lot of officials identify as the Texas government identify as Baptist, and that's the majority of them. There's a few Methodists, and then there's a few other forms of Christianity, but really not much else. So with that specific situation, I feel like that's kind of what caused it, was a lot of the Christians see it and the government see it as the Lord's Day, so we don't need to sin on the Lord's Day.
But here's the thing. Let's say you're right.
It's the same thing.
But again, that is purely it has nothing to do. You can say that particular thing. Let's say that gay marriage worked the same way, or gay worked the same way. It's fine to be okay, but only on days that aren't Sunday.
Yeah, it can't be on.
Like it wouldn't make any sense, right? I mean, like drinking. If drinking's bad one day, isn't it bad all the days? Why don't we just get rid of it entirely, or we don't have it at all? Why is it okay then but not then? And different states are like, let's put it in the grocery stores. And some states are like, that one I get more, because if you put it in the grocery store, it's more present, it's more acceptable. It's kind of like taking cigarettes off of television, the advertisements, to keep people from smoking as much, which has been working. cigarettes not being advertised on television, our generation, almost nobody's smoking. And then your generation, even less. And I'm characterizing most of the room as under the age of 25. That's when I say your generation.
Yeah, but that's just because people are moving to vapes.
They'll say literally everybody vapes, so.
I think it's because people finally stopped like, oh, they did it, we can't do it now. Maybe the fact that it's kind of getting more widespread is, this is really bad, don't do it. Because I only see like the anti-smoking ones. I've never seen a cigarette commercial.
Right, yeah. See, so you've literally never even experienced that. And I used to watch a man in a cowboy hat pull out a cigarette. You know, and they even like discourage it now from being on primetime television. You notice you don't see a whole lot of primetime shows that even have somebody on there who smokes. Probably you'll still get on the crime shows. You get a cop and he's like, too old for this crap. But that's about it.
I love
He always looks very unhappy. You never see like happy people smoking like, I'm just having a great day. Woo! Thank you for cigarettes. You don't see that. It's not a thing.
Nowadays you just see people smoking because they're stressed.
Maybe. At least, yeah, down on the shows. Yeah, there's definitely somebody who's in a very stressful situation. So, but again, like those are like a less extreme version, I think, of the death thing from the lottery. They just, why do they do it? Because this is what we have to do. Why do we have liquor laws on Sundays? That's just the way they are. I can get pulled over. I can get ticketed. You know, it's so funny. Like if it's 9:01 on a Saturday, and I'm like still in the liquor store, and I walk up there with I'm ready to buy it, and he's like, sorry, the computer's already switched the time over. I can't sell this to you. What? I cannot sell you this. The time is over. You can no longer have your scotch. When really, like, it's completely and totally arbitrary. It makes no sense.
But I've heard about like word of mouth that law's supposed to go away on Sundays.
Huh?
But I've heard about like word of mouth, like just hearing it, that law's supposed to go away on Sundays. It's not supposed to be like a law in Texas anymore after like this year.
They always say that. I don't know if that's actually a thing. Like they always talk about how it's going to go away.
I never heard of it, but
we do actually have medicinal marijuana. I think is okay now in Texas, or using so, huh?
So there's also daylight savings now. About that.
Well, here's one I think. Oh, this is a terrible idea. I shouldn't do this at all. I'm gonna say that right now. Oh yeah, plagiarism checker. Bye bye. I'm gonna write like a timeline here, okay? And this timeline is gonna go here, and this is gonna be person dies of old age naturally. I guess. This right here is, actually we should, I guess, put a marker here. Let's do two lines here. This is not an accurate representation of time throughout time. It's just separating states, okay? We'll call this production of sperm cell. We'll call this production of egg cell. At one point, people are like, if we say, like, let's say, like, you know, the sperm emits and comes in no contact with any egg, people generally don't feel like that's something that should be illegal, right? As far as I know. So if a sperm comes out of a person, does not hit an egg, we're cool with that. If an egg gets rejected by the body during the menstrual cycle, fine. Once sperm meets egg, some people are like, that's a person. Person. To some. I'm not going to have a good way of locating this. Some people say, once it starts to multiply, which is immediately, right? Doesn't it start to multiply immediately? And divide? It's not like there's a gestation period where it says, let's get to know each other. It just like literally starts dividing. But then there's a part where like, what is the development of the next things when people like go and they do the heartbeat? Okay, so I don't know when these things happen. But I know that at some point there's a heartbeat that develops. At some point there's limbs. I don't know if that's afterwards, I assume. At some point there's feeling pain. I don't remember when that is. But there are various people who say, this is when it's not okay, this is when it's not okay, this is when it's not okay to abort. And this is when it's not okay to abort. So this is abortion pill people. this is abortion people. And then there's when the baby is born, it's actually born. Or no, let's just say that we get outside the first trimester. So let's say like second trimester, third trimester, then born. So we'll call this born. We'll call this second. We'll call this third. Then we call it toddler and teenager, adult, 18, teen, toddler. Interestingly, I find, let's assume that this is a natural life that ends in death at old age. I find it very strange. There's some people who are like, we really have to protect this kid from this moment on. Protect. Actually, until they're born, then we're gonna stop. like after that baby's born to the druggy mom, what do we do? I don't know. They'll figure it out. But they didn't want to have it. Yeah, well, they'll have to deal with it now. So we definitely don't want taxes to help take care of children of mothers who are druggies. We don't want that. We just want to make sure it's born. And after that, if it dies of natural causes, oh well. So I find it very strange that some people are like, okay, but I want the baby to be born here, and then we take care of it all through its natural life, but abortion up to that point's fine. So I don't really care about it here, but then we better have taxes that take care of you all the way until you die. But everybody essentially everybody's got a point at which they're not okay with life at some point, where they're like, this part of life is okay, we need to protect it. This part of life is not something we need to protect, which I find that very strange. You would think that, and then even then, I think even the people who say, okay, well, I want it protected from the time that it's conceived all the way to death, let's tax out the butt to make sure that that baby stays alive and make sure that we take care of it until old age, right? We're talking Medicare, Social Security, healthcare, blah, 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 everything. That's a lot of taxes. We have like an adoption system set up where everybody's funneled through an adoption system that then the babies are taken care of in the foster homes. And the foster homes aren't really foster homes, they're pure final adoptions. And then everybody gets taken care of, and then no druggies, and no rehabs, and none of that stuff. And everything is okay. Everybody's fine, right? Like, you could never go bankrupt because of a health problem. You just have it taken care of. But that still starts here, doesn't it? Nobody's like, we got to end masturbation. End menstrual cycles. But there is a point at which everybody decides that there's a moment when life is now sovereign. Now, if you're a really extreme Christian, you would actually have that. There was that part in like the early Old Testament where like, do not let thy seed hit the dirt or something like that. So you'd actually say masturbation is not okay. But you would never prosecute that person as a murderer, right? Because there's a point at which we feel like the cocktail's made. That's when baby starts, right? It's just so weird. Everybody's got their point at which now it's sovereign and now it's not. It's completely different depending on who you are. And also sort of arbitrary. But none of us think it's arbitrary. All of us think that our moment that we think is absolutely correct and everybody else is crazy.
So
it's literally morally wrong to think anything different than the other people. And some people think it's all the way. Some people think it's nobody. Some people think certain people who've done certain things in their life. Some people think that other people were fine. I just find that to be strange. And I feel like that's the kind of thing that she's wanting to expose in the lottery, is that we all have these things that we think just because we think them. When nobody really can trace it back. Am I saying that any of this is specifically wrong? No. I'm saying we all have our own, but think about how different it is from person to person. And a lot of times you have a discussion and one person's like, I'm pro-life, and one person's like, I think women should be able to have the right to have an abortion, so I'm pro-choice. And you talk, and actually it turns out that their real disagreement is somewhere in this area. Where like this person's actually not okay with abortion past this moment, and the other person's not okay with abortion past that moment. So they're actually like, they mostly like, but this person considers themselves to be pro-life, and this person says I'm pro-choice. I've always found that to be so interesting. Like the strength with which we feel, and it has, I'm sure, to do with, well, I mean, the religion studier guy would say that it has to do with evolutionary stuff. You ever notice that babies look cuter? They argue that puppies look cuter. Almost everything looks cuter in its baby state, so it has soft features, so you'll want to take care of it more. And when we think of the concept of a baby, we think of a baby in its totality, that soft, helpless thing we need to take care of. But it's purely an evolutionary drive we have to take care of something that's helpless.
It's because their eyes are bigger and their forehead is like bigger. It's like basically just the shape of their face is basically what makes it.
Can you imagine if babies were wrinkled like an old man? And they had little beady eyes and a miniature nose and like no mouth yet when they were born, and they came out looking like this freakish, ghoulish creature? We'd probably be like, ah, these are from Satan. And we have to like train people in society to be okay with, okay, now listen, they're gonna look horrible, and they'd scream like they would sound like bats. Maybe they're born with wings, and the wings eventually fall off and they get cute.
What?
Right? That's it. That would completely go against our evolutionary imperative. We need things to seem soft and helpless, not like they could kill us. So that's why the evolutionary perspective, people would argue that that's why they have those soft features. They're cute and cuddly, is to make us want to take care of them.
So I will say this about the thing you have up there, about the pro-choice and pro-life. I will say watching one person of pro-choice and one of pro-life argue is probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
But I do think that when you say funniest things you've ever seen, I do think that that in itself points out something interesting. Let's say that it was an abortion. Let's say it was like, what candy bar is better? I mean, really, anytime you see two people arguing and realize that the thing they're arguing over doesn't matter, the best actually is realizing that two people think the same thing, but they haven't realized it, and they start having an argument over, literally, they both believe each other. They just don't realize it because they're so ready to argue. And you're going, wait a second, neither one of them realizes they think the exact same thing. This is hilarious.
Yes.
Now I could see your abortion argument being hilarious if you realize that both of them, like one was here and one was there. And they're like, oh really, I'm actually not okay with it like after the 51st day. I'm 55th.
Yeah, well,
we only disagree about these 4 days.
The thing is, like, I've actually experienced watching this happen. Because a certain situation happened with a friend of mine, and then there's another friend of mine who was against what she decided to do. She actually went and got an abortion due to a situation that happened to her. So and it was like immediate. I'm not talking like she waited months to do it. She got it done immediately.
Yeah.
So, and the person over here who's pro-life decided and said, this is not like what you just did was not okay. And they're sitting there, they're arguing because she thinks, because her opinion is, it's my life. I didn't want this to happen. This was not my choice. And you got over here just like, no, this was your choice. You chose to do it. But the situation over here was not optional. Let's just go ahead and keep it at that.
Yeah.
So they were arguing, and I was sitting in it. I don't know why this happened all of a sudden. But I'm sitting there. I actually was sitting in the chair opposite of the two, and they were just sitting there arguing, screaming at each other. And eventually, they finally figured out I'm sitting in the back dying because I'm laughing so hard because it's one of the dumb. It's kind of one of those dumb things you realize because at the end of the day, you have to think about the situation, and yeah, you two have different opinions, but that doesn't mean you need to push your opinions on the other person.
I'm not saying it's wrong to have done this. I'm just saying I probably wouldn't have laughed at an abortion argument the same way I would have laughed at something else, only because of what that probably means to each of those people.
I started laughing because they got off the abortion topic in general.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
And they went to arguing over something that was absolutely.
No, because you feel this way about abortion, I hate your thoughts on denim. Yeah.
Yes. Almost, very, very, almost exact.
But something you bring up there also brings up something interesting in the lottery. Remember there was those people in the lottery, they were like, well, I heard some people have completely done away with it. And they were like, that's preposterous. But it seemed like that person who at least mentioned it was somewhat open to the idea, right? Mm-hmm. They seemed like they were like, hey, some people might get rid of this whole thing that means we have to randomly kill somebody. That could be cool. And then the person was like, you're insane. And like, you'd be like, okay. Because you feel like, what are they going to do if I, go spouting this idea? But it's, again, like probably that person, if he heard it from somebody. And think about everybody like you've known that like as soon as they know somebody who's gone through a thing, their thoughts change on it. Like morality is relative depending on who's experiencing it, right? So like we might be completely and totally anti-abortion until we know somebody who had to do it for a certain reason, and then we go, oh, I didn't realize this was a thing that sometimes happened, and their stance changes slightly. Or a dad's completely, he's completely, absolutely Republican, 100%, and doesn't even believe in gay marriage. He's still Republican, or conservative, I guess I should say. But then his son comes out as gay, and he's like, Dad, I was so afraid to tell you. I thought you would hate me. Now he's okay with gay marriage, but Republican still on everything else. Or somebody who's liberal, and they're like, no guns. I hate guns. But then they're in an alleyway about to get sexually assaulted, and somebody with a gun comes and like defends them, and they end up not getting sexually assaulted. So now they're like liberal everything, but owning a personal gun is okay. So everybody's morality is sort of relative depending on what they've known and who they've experienced life with. And if you ever just notice that, maybe you're too young to know this yet because you're still sort of living in your household. Most people probably believe what their parents believe until they've lived long enough away from their parents to decide whether or not they believe that or they believe the opposite or somewhere in the middle. Or you get in a relationship with somebody and they believe something strongly, so you start to rationalize how your beliefs should kind of fit theirs. It's a thing that just happens. We're sort of a social animal, and the lottery is like one of the communities that still feel like this is okay. So they still think it. Think about countries that are still communist, and we think they're crazy. And then there are countries like us that are still capitalists, and those countries say about it, oh, they're crazy. And we all have borders, we disagree about things, and it's interesting. I don't know, the whole thing's I really didn't expect to have a conversation like this from the lottery. Do you like these sorts of discussions?
Yeah, because you get real deep into it, and it's a little more things.
I feel like it branched out a little far,
but I think that's the value of literature.
Yeah.
As long as we make sure we're like, it's kind of like the story is the sun, and we're just sort of making sure we kind of orbit around it.
It's like
we're still stuck in that gravity.
Aspect of what can be brought out from the story.
Yeah.
Rather than just, I think this is the main thing. You like, but this one main thing, you can have 6 other things as well, and then those can have, it's like a never-ending tree of just thoughts on just one little story.
That's why I keep trying to bring it back to the lottery, because it is easy to get far away, and then we're talking about, stuff that's completely and totally irrelevant.
Yeah, but with this situation, we actually were able to keep something that you could bring back to the lottery anyway.
Yeah.
So we didn't branch out too far from it.
And I could sit here and we could talk about the symbolism of why they used a wooden box. But I feel like that's useless.
It's a wooden box.
Like, why wood? What does wood symbolize in this story? When you're getting away from the whole point of it, which is the fact that these people are picking somebody to murder. And the kids are in on it. They're picking out the best stones.
Let's get this over with.
Now, here's actually something that probably is something we could bring up that is related to religion. Did anybody feel like you had a thought immediately when you saw that they were stoning the person to death? Perhaps a quote from the Bible? He who is without, let him cast the first stone. Not them. They're like, let's do this. They're joyful. They're not without sin. They're just like, I didn't get picked, and so I'm gonna find a stone. And then we're gonna get the best stones. We're gonna have a pile, and we just toss them at people, and they're murdered. Yay! It's like a party, right? It's kind of like the way we used to do hangings. People used to go to them for entertainment. They were like, they didn't have TV, but Dad Blummett, somebody's getting hung. I'm gonna go to the town square, bring the family. And if there was a murder trial that didn't end in hanging, everybody's kind of disappointed. Like, oh, I don't even want somebody to get hung.
When I
This
traveled
sucks.
to London, one of the places that we saw were like bleachers. They're like, oh yeah, hangings used to take place right there, and people would just come and watch. They paid money to come. I'm like,
yeah.
So yeah, I saw the bleachers where people sat.
So they thought that it was you couldn't see well enough if you're just in a crowd. So they said, we're going to take the theater model of like bleachers that, they go up like on levels, and so that everybody's got a clear view. I mean, really, the public record should just be, wait, is that person dead? They are? Good. That's what we wanted to make sure happened so that nobody got hurt. They were like, let's watch it. Let's watch them run out of air. Will his neck snap? Will he just suffocate? It's exciting. No, it's weird.
Days on end and then come back.
Several penitentiaries in the mid 1800s to 1900s actually would be built next to hills because they wouldn't allow people to enter the penitentiaries and the prisons. They would place them. They would actually place their prisons by where hills or cliffs were overlooking the courtyards, so that people would go up and they'd just watch people just hanging or shot. And a lot of people, and there was one penitentiary, I can't remember which one it was, they would actually place and it was in the late 40s, and they would actually have the electric chair in the middle of the courtyard, and they would just have him executed, and people would just watch.
And then too, I guess it's just funny how they've changed the type of death. I guess the difference between lottery and that is like, we have random death, which we don't like, completely random death, right? That's not fair. Totally not fair. However, most of the deaths we probably have in society, if you talk to certain philosophers, they would say they're all random. Because the concept of free will is sort of an illusion. We're all the product of genetics and parenting and how we're raised. I believe there was some twins who were separated at birth. Or no, it wasn't twins. It was kids who were given to the wrong parents. One was a poor family and one was a rich family. And the one that was accidentally given to the rich family went on to become a CEO. The one that was born to the poor family went on to accidentally become like a criminal and was currently serving time in prison. Despite both of them ended up modeling the parents they were born to, not the genetics they were born with.
I do think there are some things that are genetic.
Oh yeah, there's definitely genetic stuff.
Definitely raised without my parents, and there's stuff that I do that they do.
And there have been enough twin studies to show that, but regardless, the genetic stuff you do, like little tics you have, like what you find funny, those can be completely result of something that's encoded within you, not like, I'm going to decide not to find this funny. Even the choice to decide something like that has to come from somewhere. And so it's interesting that, like, we say, well, this person's a criminal, we should, death penalty. They did it. What caused them to do it? It doesn't matter. But some people say, yes, it does matter what caused them to do it. We should rehabilitate, not death penalty. Well, should we change the way they're educated? Should we provide them more services in their youth so that they can overcome these discrepancies of sociology? No, we shouldn't do that. I mean, it's essentially like, do we want to prevent, and it's like school shootings. It's like we all want to say, what's the best way to prevent school shootings? Give guns to teachers. I'm going to tell you right now, that ain't going to help you in this room at all. Give Nichols, he's probably more likely to accidentally shoot you or himself. It's one of the reasons I won't own a gun. Not because I defend to the death people's right to own guns, but I will never own one because I'm too clumsy. And if they say Nichols can carry a gun in the classroom, finally we're protected. No, however, there is concealed carry in Texas. I don't know if you know about this. In schools now, like there could be people in the room right now who have like a concealed handgun, and that's just law. That's a law of Texas now. You didn't know until I said anything. And you're like, wait, what? But again, don't be afraid of the law-abiding citizen who has a concealed license. It's still not okay for people who don't have it to carry. So don't irrationally be afraid of a thing you don't even know exists. But people say, like, we need more adequate, mental health screenings so that we can catch school shooters before they school shoot, right? Some people say that's what we need to do. It's not going to help if the teachers. You're not really solving the problem. You're providing a Band-Aid. So it's like, okay, well, it's mental health screenings, right? But then do we prevent people from having mental health issues? Like, how far back do we take it to decrease the randomness of death in society? And if you think about it, the lottery is talking about random death based on drawing lots. But we kind of already have something like that in terms of where you're born, what you have. Does anybody feel like every day, like sometimes you go, man, I'm just lucky? Sometimes you think, like, boy, I'm just a lucky person. Like, I feel like really, really lucky that, like, my wife was like, Here's a single dad with custody. He's already got a kid from somebody else. I'll marry him. Like, that was luck on my part. And she's pretty. You kidding? It's crazy. Like, this is not how it works for everybody. I got parents I know would take me in. I'm born in America. That's lucky. To be just born here. Of all the places on the earth to be born, I'm born in the place that has Xbox. No, that was ridiculous. We do have the best movies, though, by far. Let's get out of here. So we only talked about the lottery. We'll try to talk about the others next time.